It's so great to be here with you today. And I was thinking we could just start with you sharing a little bit about your upbringing as a child of Hmong refugees and first generation Hmong American.
Okay. So my name is Linda, and I was born and raised here in Wyandotte County. Um, my family came from Laos and Thailand, and so I'm first generation. And my parents settled in different places in America when they came to America during the Vietnam War. So my father's family grew up and settled in Texas, in Houston, Texas, and then my mother's family settled in Kentucky. And so they met each other through relatives because it was an arranged marriage. And so they got married. And when they got married, my grandfather, they didn't want to live in Texas anymore. And so they moved the whole family from Texas to Kansas. And when my grandfather moved us to Kansas, moved the family to Kansas, then relatives, our cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents started to also move to Kansas because my grandfather was one of the elders in our clan. And so they were like, oh, okay, since you're there, your family is there, we will come to Kansas. And so my grandfather was kind of like um the leading man.
Yeah.
Sure. So coming to America, they didn't know any English. And so my aunts and uncles were still a little bit younger, and they had to learn English and get into the school systems. And so coming here, it was kind of, broken English and didn't know anyone. I can, when my grandfather tells his stories, he's passed now, and it's been 3 years, but when he tells his story, when he used to tell his story, um, he would talk about leaving the country and coming here during the war. He was in the Vietnam War, and he was one of the radio operators for America. And so when he came here, it was a huge change. He didn't know anyone. He didn't know any English, but he brought the family because he thought that was an opportunity for them. And so they were fleeing from the war to come here. And when they came here, it was completely different. Acclimating into American culture and going to work and learning English, and then moving the family from Texas to Kansas. He just thought, okay, we're just going to settle and grow up, and raise my family here in Kansas, and then that's kind of what happened.
Yeah. Wow. So he was just looking for safety for his family
Yeah.
first in the country and then in picking the right spot in America that felt like the right move.
Mhm.
And it sounds like he had a sense of like a deep sense of the responsibility on his shoulders for his family, for the community, and how like maybe his leadership and decision making was going to have like a long-term impact on his grandchildren and their children, and that this is going to, he was making kind of multi-generational decisions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because my grandfather in our family clan, my grandfather is known as an elder. And so as an elder, you are the one that people come to talk to about issues, problems, or come and talk about what's going on. And as an elder, you're supposed to solve those problems. And so making that decision to move his family, he had to really think like, is this going to be a good move for my family or is it not? And it wasn't just my aunts and uncles and my father. It was his brother and their family. And so I have great aunts and great uncles who I just call aunts and uncles. But my great aunt and uncle, it was for the whole generation. And so that was a huge decision, and it was, a big change for him. My grandfather is a great storyteller, and um, I wish I would have, looking back, I wish I could record those stories that he would talk about when they moved from Laos and Thailand and through the wars and what they had to endure and the family members that they left behind and fighting for freedom and coming here and then having to learn and acclimate in American culture. That was very hard for him and the family sometimes. But he was
I
a huge figure in our family, in the Hmong community. He was one of the clan leaders.
He sounds like such an amazing person. And to have endured through so many really traumatic experiences, also maintaining that sense of it sounds like really love for his family, love for his community. And it sounds like he was maybe just a really great example of resilience
Yeah.
through difficult times. I can tell he was really special.
Yeah, he is very special.
Yeah.
And because of my grandfather, I mean, everybody came to him. He was the mentor, he was the counselor, and he was the one that they came to and talked to. And he would try to solve problems and not just do that, but he was someone that they looked up to. And if Jimmy said, this is what's going to happen. And they kind of listened. And so he was a very special, special grandpa.
Yeah. And so growing up as the granddaughter of one of the elders of the clan, who was this sort of uh, safety and sort of foundational member of the community. What was that like for you? Like, how did it impact you having your grandfather be in such a role and being part of a family like that?
Yeah. It has impacted me a lot. And I think that's where a lot of my anxiety and perfectionism and everything comes from because I was born and raised in Wyandotte County. And my family, I have seven siblings. I'm the second oldest, but I'm the first granddaughter in my family. And so there was a lot of expectations, and we're all community, family oriented, and we're a tight-knit community. And so, you know, with my grandfather being the elder and everybody coming to him and talking to him, we had to kind of, I won't speak for my siblings, but I felt like I had to, um, um, there was this role that you had, and this responsibility that you had to um, be be good, um, um, be the best you can be without someone judging you or 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 just looking down on you because you're the granddaughter of Sao Yao, that's his Hmong name, you're the
Mm.
granddaughter. And if we were set, they would ask, who's your grandparents, who's your parents? They were like, oh, we know him, so there was a huge um responsibility that was on my shoulder. And then being the first granddaughter, I have an older brother, and then I'm the
Mm.
second oldest. I had to do a lot of things. And so growing up, I had to take care of my family. And then I had to take care of not just my family, but my parents and my grandparents, because, coming to America, there's social services, there's jobs, application, going to fill out um, post office boxes or sending mail, So I translated a lot and I helped my family go through social services. Or if there was an application or doctor's office, I did a lot of the translating. And so that was a huge responsibility. And that, I mean, even in adulthood, looking back, of course, it affected me a lot too, and made myself, I have my own mental health struggles. And so, looking back, I can see what that can do to a child.
Yeah, that from such an early age, you
Mhm,
had a lot of responsibility placed on you. And in the culture, there's already sort of it's set that that is the expectation. So it's normalized
mhm,
that you would have that level of responsibility, even at that young age, because of your position in the family and because of what family you belonged to.
mhm.
And it sounds like maybe in the moment and growing up, you didn't necessarily realize what that was doing to you. But at some point later on in life, you were able to look back and say, wow, that like really deeply affected me and contributed to some difficult mental health experiences. Could you speak a little more to like that journey of like what was that like? How did you come to that realization and start to understand your own mental health better?
It wasn't until I was an adult, um, through my own struggles and through my marriage and my divorce and living on my own and raising my children, it wasn't until later on in my adulthood was when I sought mental health services and see a therapist and even get medication for my own anxiety. I looking at it now, I know what to call it. I know what anxiety is. I know what depression is. I know stressors and, suicidal ideations. Like I understand that now. Before, because my grandfather held such a high role in our family unit that there was a lot of expectations. You don't talk about mental health. You don't talk about those things. You don't give it a name of stress, of anxiety, of depression. You don't do that. You talk about the stories. And he's always connecting people to different things, but it was never mental health. It was let's pray about it. Let's talk, let's go to church. Let's sing a hymn. And so it was different. They came and they spoke to my grandfather because he was like, he was the fixer in the family. And so you come talk to my family, you come talk to my grandfather, and he would help fix your family relationships and your struggles, and he will pray with you. But it was never about stress. It was never about anxiety. It was never about mental health. It wasn't depression. It wasn't any of that stuff. So growing up, I'm like panic attacks and my heart's racing and I just need to pray about it. I just need to talk to my family about it. I need to pray harder. I need to be more patient. And so it wasn't until my adulthood, it wasn't until I got into mental health 10 years ago that I learned that was what panic attack is. That's what anxiety looked like. Oh, okay, I get it. So it was a long time. I mean, 10 years, I mean, that was a decade ago, but it was just like yesterday, you know?
Yeah, and so there's so much that's rich in what you just said. And I'm like trying to pick which of those things I want to like follow up on first. But I'd like to hear more just or touch more on this um kind of the norm of not even naming it as stress. That
Mm,
there's no concept for these mental health terms, but that people could come and talk to someone, your grandfather, and they could get help in that way. And it sounds like telling you could tell the story of what was happening. You could say what like name the facts of what was going on, but just not necessarily it sounds like name the emotions attached to what was going on.
mhm.
Do you feel like that's something just kind of more broadly across the culture, like that, like a storytelling part of the way people deal with stress without naming it as stress?
Absolutely.